So the name of the project is the Global Colonizer Reparation Index, and it is a platform for truth and healing. So I'm not going to flow through this, but suffice it to say, I spent 20 years in corporate America, largely in content, data innovation work. That's my sweet spot. So definitions. Just to break it down quickly, we are looking at this through a global lens. Our perspective is global, as the impact of colonialism is global and racism is global. I'm an American living in South Africa, and so it is very present for me how global it is. Colonizer, when we say colonizer, we mean colonization in all of its many forms. We're talking about slavery through to colonization, through to capitalism, and we see that actually as a continuum. Reparation, as we think about that, we're advocating for holistic healing and repair, and that comes in forms that are social, environmental, and financial. And at the core, we're really centering shared prosperity and a better future for all. And then when we talk about index, we're using that language because it's about measurement, and measurement matters, particularly within the capitalistic system that we live in. And having been in corporate America for so long, I know that you cannot manage what you don't measure, and that numbers drive accountability. So our mission overall is two-pronged. The first prong is about healing and human connection. So figuring out ways to deepen human connection through storytelling, telling a more comprehensive and inclusive history, and including wisdom and lived experiences from our BIPOC elders, and then engaging in a more collective imagining of positive and equitable futures. For truth and accountability, we're really looking there. I mentioned the tech background, the content background, really using the power of data science and visualization to tell this more inclusive narrative and to make it more accessible and more accurate. And then to provide actionable information to corporates, governments, and other institutions, so it becomes a tool of sorts for those who want to act on the data. So there are two bits of work that are now underway. And this is where it starts to really get exciting for me, because now the idea is becoming real, and there are tangible components of the work that are emerging. The first initiative is called Ask an Elder, and it is really about advocating intergenerational connection and wisdom sharing through social media engagement and art. I don't, in the interest of time, I don't know how much detail I can go into here, but suffices to say, we'll be partnering on social media, primarily TikTok and Facebook, plugging into communities that are already talking about sharing, connecting with elders, and engaging with this topic in general. And then through that process, we intend to identify what we're calling wisdom themes that we believe can inspire not only art, but future collaboration and more interesting collaboration with others in the space. And then from a truth and accountability perspective, that prong, we are working on a leaderboard and equity circle process. So I don't know if you guys have been following this story, but post George Floyd's murder and all of the other murders in 2020, that were quite similar in nature, there was an outpouring of funding given to Black Lives Matter movement. There have been articles published about this. I think the number now is actually up to 67 billion, but only 0.005% of that funding has actually been dispersed and made available in communities in need. And so we have embarked on a partnership with the organization that did that research, and a community of intrapreneurs, and these are innovators that are working inside of corporates to make change for good, to come together in community to figure out if there are best practices and ways that we can accelerate the deployment of these funds into communities that need them, right? So working with corporates to help to accelerate that flow. So this is the leadership team, artists, leadership, development, data scientist, myself, innovation. And these are the interns that we're very happy to have on board. They're all based here in South Africa, either in Cape Town or in KZN, but you see their backgrounds are in either applied math or information systems and business. So that is my 5 minutes. I think I managed to do that pretty well. And I'm happy to take any questions. I mean, how do you talk about this topic in 5 minutes? I have impressed myself, I have to say.
That was Saidah. That was fantastic. I appreciate your elasticity in doing it in 5. So go back to your great. Ask the Elder slide if you could, because I would. My question is for you to talk a little bit more about that particular project, especially with some of the work that is happening with faculty that we have here inside of the center. So I would like you to expand on that a little bit.
Sure. So where to start? So basically the idea here is to begin and to accelerate and expand really a conversation that's already happening on social media. There is quite a lot of energy and enthusiasm around just collecting stories that have not been collected, connecting with elders, with documenting a more inclusive history. And so part of what hashtag Ask an Elder is all about is just lifting that up and accelerating it. And so with that, we're going to, in terms of process, we're creating a template that we want to include questions, a series of questions in, and have influencers and others who are engaging on the topic sort of respond to, and we'll collect that information and pull it all in and organize it, as I mentioned, in these wisdom themes that we then want to make available to, we have partners in artist partners, we have artist collectives that we've been talking to. And we don't want to be prescriptive about what type of art. I think all art is welcome, but we would love for the wisdom that comes out of these conversations and this interaction to really inspire almost a future imagining, like to kind of be that spark that is what can we build on, and what can we build for the future that is grounded in this wisdom that our ancestors have, our elders are giving us, right? So very future facing, we'd like it to be, but also whatever sort of comes out in that moment is also welcome. I mean, art is not something that I have any plan to try to shape on behalf of the artist. So that's.
Thank you for that answer and response and the explanation. That is really helpful. Other questions from the floor? Anyone else? Go ahead, Cassie.
What's sort of the time frame for some of these elements of your project, Saidah?
So we want to, for Ask an Elder, we want to launch around Juneteenth is sort of the target to begin to go out and engage with influencers, to have the template ready to go to market. In my corporate speak, it would be around then. Interestingly enough, that also coincides with Youth Day in South Africa, which is June 16th. So it also resonates in both markets, which is why we really sort of like that. It works cross-continent.
That's awesome. Anyone else? Go ahead, Jamie.
Thank you. So the Ask an Elder, is that going to be built upon just the South African market elders, or is it going to be drawing from both the U.S. market and the South African market, or is it global?
So the intention is for it to be global for sure. For Juneteenth, we're probably going to look at really focusing in on South Africa and America as the two sort of focal points, geographically speaking. And that will probably stay the focus initially, but absolutely the goal is for it to be global. I mean, there's diaspora everywhere with stories to tell, and elders everywhere with stories to tell for that matter.
And just as a quick follow-up, 11 different languages in South Africa alone. Is this going to be done in English, or are you leveraging the passing of unique dialects and language down? All English. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, it's English. It's English for now. It's a great question, though, and one we will absolutely continue to consider. But English right now is the common language that we can all sort of connect around, because at the end of the day, this is about connection. And languages, that's one language that we do have in common.
Thank you.
Rachel.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing all of this work. In this Ask an Elder project is really beautiful and really exciting in particular. I was just curious if there was a plan or a vision around preserving the recordings in some way outside of the social media platforms that they're on, or creating an archive of these stories that will live on in another place as well.
Yes, I love that question. Absolutely. That is very much top of mind for me, thinking about how to pull the stories out of those environments and create space for it separately. So the short answer is yes. Right now we're deciding whether or not it's a standalone website, or if we work with one of our other partners hosted in Africa. You will know Osubi. We've been talking to Femi about partnering with him and using his platform to do that, which might actually be the perfect first staging place for this. But yes, the short answer is we absolutely believe that it should live outside of those environments. Part of how we want to organize the wisdom themes as well, right? So the content's coming in as we begin to see and organize that there are themes emerging. Those themes will be showcased in this other location that I was just describing.
Jeremy.
I had a quick question about, so this is very much about connection and the way that we can learn and grow intergenerationally, but I was also curious if there was thoughts about what happens in moments where generational wisdoms don't quite match up, or ways that the connection between generations isn't necessarily the healthiest. And to what extent, like, wisdom that is derived from an elder may not actually be applicable, or might even in some ways be harmful to younger generations. And I was just curious if there was a thought about, how to maybe work with the potential for things that aren't as driving of connection, or could be taken that way.
Wow, that's a great question. I think my initial answer to that is that while we don't want to censor, right, our focus is very much on wisdom that we believe to be of value as we're trying to build a better future. So as we're selecting stories or feedback or organizing whatever the output of this will be, suffice it to say that it will be the kinds of things that are most likely to be more helpful as we move forward as humanity, and not moving us in a different direction than that. So think aligned with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, aligned with issues of equity, aligned with, that's the energy we're trying to lift up. Yeah.
Saidah, if you could quickly, just for those, and I realize this is a resource that we're going to have to send out more, if you could quickly drop your contact information into the chat.
Yes.
Because I know that our folks are always thinking about, okay, great, so how do we plug this into this other thing that we have going on right now? That having a way to contact you is always a good way to go. Kishar threw a question in the chat as well. How can we support your work?
giving me feedback. I mean, one thing that I'm sort of always brainstorming on and thinking about is like, well, what questions do we want to ask our elders? And so, like, if anything comes to mind on that, then yeah, just share with me, because this is something that I feel is a conversation that I don't see an end to it, to be honest. And I also think that there's conversation to be had going both ways, right? Things we can learn from our elders and things that our elders can learn from other generations as well.
My last two things is I recently saw something on 60 Minutes, some folks utilizing AI technology to record oral histories from, I want to say, Jewish survivors of the Holocaust. I want to say, I could be wrong.
Correct.
And
that's right.
And they asked them this series of questions, which would then effectively allow the AI to, you walk in and you speak to the hologram, and the hologram responds to you based on this collection of data that they have of all of these questions, and was blown away by that concept and idea. And so when I hear you talk about this and the kind of this unpredictable future of like how far and how large this blossoms out, I would say that that would be something to definitely take a look at and see how much they approached it, and potentially even look at some of their question lists to see if that's something that you could kind of strain some of those questions that help to open the door to find some of those jewels. But I was excited about the prospect of something like that. And I remember Carla also sharing a similar type of hologram interaction with respect to oral histories at a museum in Montgomery, a civil rights museum in Montgomery. So there might be some examples to be able to pull in, but with obviously the advances that we're having around AI, being able to feed data into a system like that, that could almost be a living and breathing thing, it is to me incredibly exciting. And I just want to also say thank you. Thank you for number one, taking the time, whatever time it is for us. I know it's some crazy time for you right now. So we appreciate either you being up early or late to be here. And in many ways, I want to definitely affirm that this is exactly the type of conversations, ideas that we want to be nurturing in CAIM. So we're excited that you were selected as one of our funding recipients this year, and know that people are going to be emailing you in the next couple of days to figure out how to connect with the work that you're doing. So thank you. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.